The reason that I talked so much about race in the beginning is, your current role with the Seattle Mariners. I'd love to know how you were approached by the Mariners, how you connected with the Mariners to become the vice president of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it really sounds like all of these past work experiences really have prepared you to navigate inside a major corporation or a major, business at the level that you are with clarity and life experience and true wisdom on all this stuff. How did that happen, Catherine?
Well, the Mariners, so I've always wanted to work for the Mariners. I don't know why, but it's always been something that, growing up watching them and my husband's a huge, huge, huge fan. And so, and then my kids play baseball. So it was sort of the timing was perfect. But when this opportunity came up, this role of DEI came up, it was the first time this role had ever been, th- at the Mariners. And I don't see myself as a DEI practitioner. I didn't see myself as a DEI practitioner. I viewed myself as always looking through the lens of DEI in everything that I did, and also working very closely with DEI, because all the areas that I work in, you have to, I really believe you have to have that lens. And I think actually every department. So when this position came up, I had two friends actually independently text me because they knew that I love the Mariners. And they texted me and they said, "There's a position at the Mariners. You need to go and apply for it." And I texted both of them back and I said, "I wish I could, but it's not DE. It's DEI. I don't do DEI, right?" So 2 weeks later, a good friend of mine who actually does DEI for the Seahawks, and she's the first DEI person for an NFL team, she then contacted me. She called me and she says to me, "Casey, you need to apply for this job." And I worked with her at Expedia. And I said, "I think it would be insulting for me to apply for this job because you've been doing this work your whole career. And for me to think that I can just go and do it and take on this title." And she said, "No, you've been doing this work. We did it together." And
Wow.
and she said, "You could do this in your sleep. You need to go and apply." And I said, "Let me think about it. Let me think about it." So I had another friend who also does DEI and she contacted me the next day. And I thought, is there some conspiracy here? Did you talk to, did you talk to Karen? And this other friend of mine said, "I was asked to provide 3 recommendations for this role, and I only gave your name. So please answer their call. Don't embarrass me. Just answer their call." So I
Wow, that's a good friend.
yeah, so I did, and as I was talking through the position with them, I made it very clear to them, I am not a DEI practitioner in the traditional sense. I made very clear to them that everything that I do is through the DEI lens, but I would never say that I am, this expert at DEI. But I also laid out how I would do it. I told them I'm not going to, come in and try and put in all these trainings and everything. Trainings will come if they're needed. I would go in and really try to get into every department and encourage every department to look through the DEI lens in everything they do. And so when I got the position, as with any position, I think in a new position in an organization, there's some skepticism. The Mariners is it's a, it's not old, but it's old school in
Yeah.
terms of baseball, and they've never had this. And then they've had some, there was some history with the Mariners, and so I also was very cognizant of this role coming at a time after George Floyd, when a lot of companies just started hiring for DEI roles when they didn't really understand the commitment and the
Yeah.
and many of the people who were hired didn't have any business doing the job. And I didn't want to be one of those people who didn't have any business doing the job, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
And then
totally.
we've seen, just in the last year or so, when economics has played a big part in all this, those are like the first roles to go. And many of them didn't really know what to do. So I didn't want that to be the case. But knowing that it came with that baggage. So when I started, when you go into rooms and you're introducing yourself and trying to make relationships, you get kind of the skeptical eye, the side eye, oh, it's the DEI person. And I would make it very
Yeah.
clear to them, I'm not coming here to tell you that you're doing something wrong or to tell you that you're, that you're perpetuating, racism or whatever. Like, I'm not coming to do that. I'm really coming to just help you be better, because not help you be better, help the organization be better about the ultimate goal that we have of increasing the fan base, right? The Because I really tried, and everything I do, even when I did social impact, it was always about the bottom line. Because if you cannot make a business case for it, people won't listen. And so I really tried to make anything that I do not come from a emotional perspective. Sometimes emotion can get into it, but really from what's best for business. And so that's how I've kind of, tried to look at the role. Like, if we're trying to increase the fan base, who's the fan? Baseball's the all American sport, right? Who's all American
Yeah.
these days, right?
Hmm.
It looks
Yeah.
all American looks different. Therefore,
And it's changing all the
it's
time, right?
changing and it's constantly changing. And so when you look at the types of things that are happening in the ballpark, trying to increase the fan base, well, the fan base, the population is changing. So therefore you have to be able to pull in and relate to different types of people. But then in the ballpark, the food matters too. What kind of food are you serving? What kind of programming do you have? What kind of and of course, I don't have anything to do with the players, but you know what? I was so excited when we had Colton Wong, the Asian player, because when
Yeah.
Ichiro was there, it was huge, but he's from Japan, and so when you have a Hawaiian native and what I mean? Like, there's just certain things that bring more rich culture, and so it's so exciting to have that type of thing so that when you're trying to impact the business side of things, you can, what I try to do is just give a different lens for everybody so that they can see, while we're trying to recruit, this is why I got recruiting, because I asked a lot of questions. Where are we going to recruit from? Do you have to have baseball experience to do these certain jobs? Why do you have to have baseball experience? Because don't you want the best person who can do that job and then they can learn the baseball piece? Of course, that's different in the baseball side of the house, but we're not talking about that, because if I was able to impact the recruiting on the baseball side, we'd all be in trouble, right? So, but you know what I mean? It's like appropriate
Yeah.
where it's appropriate. So,
Yeah, I think, and Catherine, what I'd love to ask you is that I think there's a lot of misinformation and misconceptions about DEI. And what I would love is that, as you said, post George Floyd, businesses are clamoring to hire people to fill these positions. So I guess I would love to hear you explain, what should DEI be for a business? Like, what should it be?
so again, I don't want to claim that I'm the expert on it, but in my mind, what it should be is that your employee base looks like the population that you're trying to serve and the population where you have your business or your, the presence. But also, I think that in everything that you do, you should be trying to appeal to everybody. It's less about DEI, um,
Hmm.
those three words, and to me, it's more about inclusion. It's because I think that the inclusion piece does it, or belonging, that maybe doesn't get as much of the play, because when you look at diversity and equity, numbers come into play, right? And numbers can be deceiving. Numbers can also drive people to actions that you don't really necessarily want them to be taking. And sometimes numbers can hide things. You can hide behind the numbers and say, oh, look at how great we're doing. And then it's not the case on the other side, right? So I think that if I were to say it, what is it that's the most important is the place that the place of business that you have, the most inclusive? Does it make your people feel that they belong there, that they can do their best work? And I'm not talking about bringing your dog to work, or being able to show up in your pajamas or what, like, there's some limits I also have on that, okay? But I'm talking about your ideas and
Yeah.
the experiences that you bring to the table, because the number of times that I was dismissed because of my experience, when I would say, excuse me, um, maybe at Starbucks, why are we promoting this thing when it actually women don't, love that because of this and this and this. And they would kind of say, well, numbers, and I'm just using that as an example, but same thing with travel,
Yeah.
right? You know,
Yeah.
why aren't you listening to the people who make the travel arrangements? It's mostly women and it's mostly mothers, right? Or like things like in sustainability, the number of the footprint, the environmental footprint. Why are we so afraid to put the impact on the site when we know that people aren't going to make travel decisions, that most people are not going to make decisions and say, you know what, I've been wanting to go to Greece all my life, but because this footprint is so big, I'm not going to go. I'm just going to go virtually. How many people do you know that would do that? But instead to say, let's step back and let's see how we can help people go to Greece and be more sustainable in their travel, be more aware, be more educated. And I feel like with DEI, that's all the same thing, where we should just help people to be more educated and be more thoughtful about the roles that they play, because every single person in your organization has a responsibility to DEI.
Yeah. And to really understand and value and respect everybody, right?
Absolutely. Humanity these days, I think, it's so fragile. I mean, I really it really does feel like we're in the twilight zone, going back with all the things, and not to get political, but all the things with the Supreme Court, the elections, and then now with the things that are happening around the world. I I am every morning I listen to a news podcast on the New York Times daily.
Yeah.
And as
It's
I'm
great.
listening to this, sometimes I sit and I just go, I swear I have deja vu from when I was watching Phil Donahue or something. The topics that we're talking about, immigration, all these things are coming around. And I think that the more we go backwards in that, the more we have to be more thoughtful from a corporate standpoint, from a personal standpoint, because there's so much noise and people forget the history. We cannot forget the history, because the minute we forget the history, humanity really goes out the window.
Yeah.
Because how is it that we're at this point where we're repeating things over and over again? So,
Um, I hate to wrap this up because I literally could go for another hour, but Catherine, as we kind of wrap things up, something you told me a few weeks ago really stuck with me. And, our mission on the Beats Working podcast is to redeem work. And that is to show that work can be honorable and it can have a really beautiful impact on the world and a really wonderful impact on the lives of people doing the work. You told me, to me, it's not about getting to the next level, it's about impact and whether I'm happy. Is that sort of the definition for you in terms of what redeemed work looks like?
I think so, and especially in this day and age where, after COVID, there was so much of the isolation, and I think people think that working from home is the end all be all, but that human connection, and to know that, not just to know that people can do great work remotely, right? And this is not a commercial for going back to work or anything. It's just that there's something about human connection and seeing somebody in front of you telling you, thank you, what you did really impacted me, or seeing the smiles. I'm in baseball. In the scheme of things, in what's happening in the world, it seems like baseball's, who cares? But we have to care, because things like baseball, things like music, things like art, those are the things that keep us connected, right? And even in baseball, it's a job. People work in a job and they work very hard. And my job now is to impact those people, and to impact them in a way that makes them feel good, makes them feel like they have a place, that they're valued. 'Cause I think at the end of the day, everybody wants to be valued and that's what I mean by impact also. They wanna feel valued, and they wanna feel like the work that they're doing matters. Somebody cares about the work that you're doing.
Katherine Cheng, this has been so richly rewarding to spend time with you. And it just, as we think about the career that you've had and all the different positions, I think the common denominator is the humanity that you brought to each of those positions and just poured yourself into. And you also, it really seems like you know who you are, and what a testament probably to your upbringing, but you know who you are. And in all of these jobs, you made your presence known and you made your ideas known and you made a big difference as a result. So it's an honor knowing you, and keep up the great work and go Mariners, huh?
Thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate it because I feel the same about you and what you're doing with this podcast and sharing these stories, and I'm really honored to be a part of it. So thank you for having me.
All right. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.